다 다심지 다시 냠지 다심지 보드기 심부지 다 다이트체
So we already covered the section from Shantideva's text during the generation of mind awakening mind, the section that deals with the exchanging and equalizing of self and others.
다디네 맨서 다도 채와당사 쇼고 다 수서 솔로가 다도 십주 디멘션에 아니 준주랑 그 두모모임 디지레 야지 그게 로장단치 다들이야 아니 급제나 다 랑진진게 다 랑진진 당돌랜댕에 현진진을 전화처럼 해봐 진짜게 다 다디 다 대당 다양 진진 연대 가장 진진기 견대 현진진기 연대 통하면도 다디 심전의 염도를 봐 다디 현실을 지기지잖아요 지혜를 진규 현심전의 차트송 도스전에 아니 다 지 토를 되네 차도 거면 냠을 되네 대심 거면 멤버를 되네 아니 그래다 그게 바다 통주지 않소로 나 되게 미고지 하지 대로 편부도 와
So from stanza 140 on, presents a certain contemplations and thought processes that is very unique to the method of training one's mind according to Shantideva's text here. And the practices involve imagining one's own self, kind of old self, as the embodiment of self-cherishing that only cares about its own welfare and is totally oblivious to the welfare of the other sentient beings. So we set that old self aside on one side, and then we imagine another part of ourself, a self that is capable of seeing the benefits of thought cherishing others and the disadvantages of the thoughts that cherishes one's own welfare alone. And therefore, we set aside this self, which on the basis of seeing these differences, then emphasizes the welfare of other sentient beings and sides more with the other sentient beings for whose sake you are trying to seek their welfare. And then one kind of compares one's thoughts in relation to these and tries to go through kind of a thought experiments, as it were, where you imagine, kind of competing with this old self and imagining if it to be superior, then you try to cultivate a sense of envy and envy and jealousy. If it is deemed to be equal, then you cultivate a thought of competitiveness, and if it is deemed to be inferior, then you tend to look down upon it, kind of in a disparaging manner. So in this way, you try to train your mind, and it can be, very effective. So this is an approach that is very unique to Shantideva's text.
Tadine the shu kaza sholoka dada ngulchung ngulshi sholoka che daga nöto dagsha cha sen yache tadine di dada tamjo to ko dala nebache yi gyu rangdun jendo ba gyaba changmen dai gyu jang sheso ne 나도 zibaliya 반 jambu ko ne da rāng jīpa zīmbi jīnzīn dīgī, tū tātā pātū jīpa rāng jīpa rīdī, ngodā yōngyā dī rāng dā pūngyā jīgī, dā yōngdā dīdī jāmbū kōne pā tāmā yīparī. Jāmbū kōne dā zui bē sōchī.
So then in stanza 154, which is on page 109, we're talking about the English translation, where we read, "We should deprive him of happiness and always yoke him to our anguish." So then, so from the second part of that stanza onwards, Shantideva is presenting a series of, again, thought processes where you are applying a much more gentler approach to this old self, that is the embodiment of self-cherishing, pointing out to this old self that although what you truly wish for is your own welfare, but you have not been able to succeed in this. So in this way, applying a much more gentler approach, one is again addressing the self-cherishing attitude. So from this second part of that stanza, we read, "We all have been afflicted in the cycle of existence hundreds of times by him," talking about the self-cherishing attitude. "Countless eons have passed away while you sought your own benefit. With this great toil, you have gained only suffering," and so on.
다드네 쇼로고 짜도 주르게.
And then we move to stanza 168.
전에마다 쭈무고네. 다다 쭈무고네. 다 랑진진 답하게 가서 그래. 견주셔야. 다 언제 제대로 담지 않네. 심지 제대로 미친나. 결은 예보 근데에 균이 찾아 잡았어. 그게 고 가르라고 뭔지 되지 셴인데. 내동 타교 강도로 되게 잡고 끊심자 셔서 또 쭈무고네. 다 랑진진 봐 견주셔야 돼.
So from stanza 168, where we read, "O mind, if you do not do this, even when you are being told, then I shall subjugate you alone, for all faults dwell in you." So from this point onwards, now the text is employing a much more harsher approach and reprimanding the self-cherishing embodiment, the embodiment of the self-cherishing thought, the self, and saying that if you are not going to heed to what I have instructed to advise you, then I'm going to do such and such. So we read, for example, in the text, "Where will you go? I can see you, and I shall annihilate all your vanities. That was another earlier time when I was ruined by you. Now give up this hope. Still I have my own self-interest. Unconcerned as you are with much distress, I have sold you to others." So in this manner, the text then presents a series of thoughts where you are employing a much more harsher approach against the embodiment of self-cherishment.
다시 쇼디도가 자도 든주 든이 대저교계 저듯이 코진비 요린 독 단위 커는 전체의 교계랑도 선부성 대제 단에 간다나 랑라다게 갈미죠. 대제 단에 손전은 상다 다도 손 차스 다 디멘전이야 룰 착배 님이 야 직담이 오이 말이야.
So then we read in stanza 171 and 72 the following. Stanza 172 and 73 the following. Handing me over in that way many times, you have tormented me for a long time. And remembering those grudges, I shall destroy you, talking about the self-cherishment, the servant of your own self-interest. If you are pleased with yourself, you should take no pleasure in yourself. If you need protection, it is inappropriate to protect yourself. And then, so the translation is slightly different. So here it reads, if you wish your own pleasure, so this is in the annotation 325, which is closer to the Tibetan text. If you wish for your own pleasure, you should not take pleasure in yourself. If you wish to protect yourself, you should always protect others. And then from stanza 174 onwards, then Shantideva is presenting once again a series of thought processes aimed at dealing specifically with clinging and attachment to one's body. So we move then to 185.
소수 삼는다는 얘들 다 약속이 난 정말 제대로 또 그들 들어 계속 놓아 샤샤 밀대비네 먼저 통주 전문이 밑나 통주 주주제다가 디디 상월로 랑도 되버다 동네면도 시다래 상월 매주시고 계속 누가 짜시면서 따스게 놓아 미국다스게 놓아 자 진짜 인도산 딱 가를 내버렸으나 나도 상월로 대원도 동네면도 시다래 이네 아주 집에 잡아 랑 집을 집에 샤원도 다네 그도 들려 뭐 좋다 진짜 이번 인도산에 단에 캐베 제수 닉데스 단에 다게 캐베 제수 닉데스 캐바 저주 삼바 탑식이다 냠링이 내 등에 냠링이 내 냠신나게 대다게 제수 장대 바유 담는 전세네 니도 먹고 넣어버려 계세 투지처럼 따랐어 계세 투지처럼 루루 yap사로 써봐 다 지금 오늘 전에 파고기 오늘 지금 계셔 당봐 진짜로는 제디 영야디디 투근 남주 현대의 학습 테이트로 되는 요 맞다 시행할수도 자 진짜지 타네 투 라나 소수이네 투 여면 투 띵네 침등이지 다 여자면 세버 자 진짜 이번 인도산에 계셔 투지처럼다 리퀘스트는 수차대 인제 차버만 배는 단이 다게 동네 남탈 친 랑카를 도 샤샤베 동네 줘야 믿어와 동네 사야 믿어와 자 진짜 인도산에 대지버 세베션 로그엔람에 심렌데 양다 밀로 따버려 다게 냠버 샤버 차 유지하면서 좋다.
So we read from stanza 185, which reads in the following. So enough of childish conduct. And this is very true. If we examine ourselves, we all know that deep down, each of us have always endeavored to seek the fulfillment of our basic aspiration to be happy and to overcome suffering. And it is on the basis of this motivation we live our entire life. And each of us, all 6 billion human beings on this planet, each of us in our own way is trying all our best to try to fulfill this aspiration. But up until now, if we look around, there isn't anyone that we can really truly emulate as having succeeded in this really aspiration. And we can look at ourselves what the fate of our current situation is, and where we have gotten as as a result of pursuing endlessly the same kind of same old way of trying to fulfill this basic aspiration. And then, therefore, Shantideva writes, recalling the teaching on heedfulness and warding off drowsiness and lethargy, I shall follow the wise. So wise here refers to great masters of the past, such as Nagarjuna and so on, who have presented a different way of proceeding in trying to fulfill this basic aspiration to attain happiness. And the way in which these great masters have done is employing or applying both the faculty of intelligence and wisdom on the one hand, and a truly altruistic intention, a compassionate altruistic intention on the other. And in this way, they have pursued the welfare of other sentient beings, so that even on the personal level, and these masters can feel a tremendous sense of satisfaction and sense of fulfillment, because, and at least they can feel that there is no need for remorse or regret, because they have done all they can. So, and these are the way of the wise. And so Shantideva is suggesting that, I shall follow the way of the wise. And then we read in stanza 186, which is actually in the footnote, 329, where Shantideva writes, like the compassionate children of the conquerors, I shall endure the rigors of righteousness. If I do not constantly strive day and night, when will my suffering ever come to an end? And this is very true, because the point Shantideva is making is that if we are serious about bringing suffering to an end, we need to apply effort and do something about it. Suffering cannot just come to an end, by itself. And then he writes, therefore, so this is stanza 187, therefore, withdrawing the mind from evil ways, I shall always concentrate it on its own meditative object to eliminate obscurations. So with that, the reading of the 8th chapter is complete.
So this chapter is most important part of the Shantideva's book. Very important. So as a daily practice, at the beginning, I think read the first chapter about the benefit out of altruism. Then, perhaps, I think, the 6th chapter and 8th chapter, read and contemplate, and some feeling develop. Then the 2nd chapter, the 8 limbs, as we done this morning. And then Chinchu Sempe Tabalaya, Tabalang Benaya, Membesem Kia, Susuta, Chogat, Chana, and the outside.
So as we did this morning, then I'll move on to the chapter 2 and 3, where we had the practice of the 7 limbs. And then on the basis of that, if we generate the awakening mind and recite those sections that deals with taking the Bodhisattva vows. So if you approach Shantideva's text in this order and this manner, it would be very beneficial.
Yeah.
So now we will read from Kamalashila's text.
Chidan Debashin of Miwal Sim Ramado Yoba Tation to him, but it was how say. Ten and Shinedunel, how long over Chades? This one.
So we read from page 122 of the English text, the translation, where the bold text is the root text reads, after realizing tranquil abiding, meditate on special insight, thinking as follows.
다 항동 검수 데이터 딘다 간다데 다 항동 검야 디 여러 시월해 안다 지사는다 야 생각을 잘못했다 지금 가다이니 항동 검야가 좀 달리야다 신의 주비야지도 숨겨야돼 아주 대신에 주야 거든디 무시 주야라고 지금 감공의 심 주야 된다는 신의 주야 말이 아주 신의 주야디 지들 대별 상도 해야 된다래 지들 대별 상도 쓰다디 지도도 상도래 지도도 상도 용할라 내가 미국 지도의 시급을 지도 미국 지도의 시급 관에 아니 제도의 장배 주시장 어디에서네 아니 지도는 상도 하고 이 말이 다 지도의 있잖아요 지도 때는 폭풍이야리 대단한 대코나 지도부시나
So here we are cultivating a special insight in the context of supramundane meditation, supramundane level of insight meditation. So we are not cultivating special insight as a means of acquiring mundane powers such as clairvoyance or some other superior mental power, but rather we are cultivating special insight so that one will be able to penetrate into the actual nature of things. So it is a special insight directed to or focused on the way things actually are. So in order to do that, first of all, one needs to establish the object of our meditation. Here, the object would be emptiness, the ultimate nature of reality. So therefore, as Shantideva points out in his Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, one needs to cultivate a special insight, and for this, one needs to have an understanding of what that suchness is, ultimate nature of reality is. So in the text we read, in 125, we read of the English text, what is suchness like? It is the nature of all phenomena, and so on.
강团的某个不同是刚才的自己当你就懂吧你这这样世界跑到新北到过牛的现今的没的公这个路的长呢
So here
在这边呢新的人的西路光把它超我是的但是知道了呀那大没吧来刚才的大没吧的确实大没吧是呢那呢大没你些那다 그수양을 개중아 다 우모버도 낭시 탄예도 랑제 시간의 미식이 니여베 있잖아요 디파 세브차야 같은 달이야 아니 낭배 좀더 디디 두분일 체니 런시 예버마요 좀더직 런시 매버마요 좀더직 니체 다디 니체체 다 안데 런시 예버마요 낭배 좀더지 가사 다미슬러도 가서 아주 되게 자유주도에 담이 뒤숭겨야래. 최지 담이 소리잖아요. 선사베이는 송진이동 취 담이 런주베이는 아니 최터제 단동 기타 담이 뒤숭겨야래. 공소부처 다도 뭐. 또 쳐다도 못 줘. 쇼래. 뒤숭겨야래. 다 런신 매벌마 되기 아니 가사가 담이 가서 아주들 자유도 담에 뒤에 시기할 때 담에 라빠를 했지. 강사가 담에 가서 우리 그게 다 뭐마도 쉐베 있나? 그 추이 담에다 간다 그게 각체 동수 찍을 했지. 강사를 시동한데 강사가 담에래. 풍소를 시동한데 풍소 추이 담에 있는 시선이 강사를 시동한데 강사가 담에래. 전에 담에 일을 최생이 잡아마도 하다 동수 개발 매도 소래. 다디 개발 찍던 거야. 안다 끔디 까말을 실을 yap세니 러시 예방마요 공제. 우마바레데 있는 러시 예방마요 공인 말에. 대라야 낭세기 송진이도 그때 관한이 시행이 치든 미싱이 지다. 치든 시행이 지 니여래. 이 치든 미싱이 되 말에.
So when we speak about here, Kamalashila writes that it is the nature of all phenomena that ultimately they are empty of self of persons and self of phenomena. This is realized through the perfection of wisdom and not otherwise. And then he cites from Samdhi Nirmochana Sutra, and then he concludes by writing, therefore, meditate on wisdom while engaging in tranquil abiding. So here Kamalashila explains the understanding of suchness in terms of the two selflessnesses, selflessness of person and selflessness of phenomena. So generally, within the Buddhist traditions, there are different understanding of what constitutes the true understanding of selflessness of person and selflessness of phenomena. And so within the Buddhist tradition, Buddhist philosophical schools, broadly one can divide the schools into two camps. On the one camp that accepts some notion of intrinsic reality and on the conventional level, and then another camp that rejects notion of intrinsic reality or intrinsic existence, even on the conventional level. So we can broadly divide the Buddhist schools into two camps. And so the first camp, for them, the understanding of selflessness of person or no self or person is defined in terms of the absence of a self-sufficient, substantially real self-sufficient person. And whereas they define selflessness of phenomena as being quite different. For example, for the mind-only school, selflessness of phenomena would be defined in terms of the absence of duality of subject and object, whereas the Madhyamaka Svatrantika, the autonomous school, they define selflessness of phenomena in terms of the emptiness of true existence of things. However, the second camp among the Buddhist schools, those that reject notion of intrinsic existence, even on the conventional level, for them, insofar as what is being negated is concerned and the subtlety of what is being negated, there is no difference between selflessness of person and the selflessness of phenomena. Just as the emptiness of inherent existence of person is the selflessness of person, emptiness of inherent existence of phenomena, or the aggregates, is the emptiness of selflessness of phenomena. So there are these different understanding of the teaching on no self, and Kamalashila, the author of this text, together with his own master, belongs to that group. Although they are Madhyamaka middle way school masters, but they also belong to the camp that accepts notion of intrinsic existence, at least on the conventional level. And within that, again, there are two subdivisions. One accepts some degree of reality to the external material world, while others, such as Kamalashila and his master and his own teacher, rejects the notion of external material reality and kind of side more with the standpoint of the mind-only school. So there are these differences in their understanding of what constitutes the true selflessnesses.
Yeah. Then toward the level one.
Yes.
I think session of question again. I forget.
This is a more practical question. Can you recommend a text to use for the Chenresik Avalokiteshvara sadhana practice?
저 차가 예를 나서 여러분. 저 차가 이집이 때네 야고를 때 맞네. 그냥 저기 잠도 심지 야고 삼시다. 새끼 이집이 과학이야 맞다. 근데 잠도 심지 야고 삼단서를 쇼데. 애네 동리지고. 봐. 다 잠도 모두 당을 타는 심지 야고 삼단 대쇼데 동리지고. 그래서도 다음에를 삼단 되니 ene Genesis number liya shar enda 다 제주 하 초고면 생기 동거 이거 저수 라신 소는 이제는 동배사 전에 되는 다 지금 저게 나抓的这有的这毛钱一毛钱但英不如活的大的东西都不送能真的是个超过光那得那什么呀我们啊红送什么些인터넷다 인터넷 내가 장하잖아 뭔잖아 역시들이 이 쇼데 뭐체
There are actually many different versions of the sadhana practice of various length. So, and in fact, strictly speaking, the recitation of these, chanting of these sadhanas are not that critical. What is more critical is the actual meditation. So maybe one thing that would be more effective or beneficial would be to do the practice in the following manner. First, take refuge in the three jewels, and then after that, generate the awakening mind, and on the basis of that, then one meditate upon emptiness of one's own self, and then imagine that understanding, that mind understanding emptiness takes the form of Avalokiteshvara, and then visualize the 3 points of your body, your heart, your throat, and your crown being marked by the 3 syllables Hum, Ah, and Om, and then based on that, visualization, then you can start doing the mantra recitation of the 6-syllable Om Mani Padme Hum, and then at the end you can do a dedication, a short dedication. So that actually may be effective. So it is not necessary to do any verbal chantings of the words, of the lines. In fact, to do this kind of sadhana mentally it's tougher, because when you try to do the actual meditation, you will recognize that it is more difficult. Whereas if you have something to chant, it's easier, because while you are chanting, your mind can still wander around. Please, Your Holiness, please comment on the issue of allowing people to be ordained if they are devoted practitioners but must continue to work at a job to take care of their families, children, parents, or themselves. This is common in the West, especially for nuns, because there is no supportive structure or community for them.
Yes. Yeah, this is one problem. In India, there are some nunneries, and also now one nunnery, especially for Westerner, although small. But now there is basis there, so we must improve this. We can increase.
No.
Then I remember in France, southern France, one nunnery. I think there, one time, Yorba, in southern France, one nunnery.
Australia,
Australia, yes.
France,
So there are some institutions mainly for monks, and also some nuns. But that I think one thing. And then, the other language has in Kasa.
간다 내가 최고냐 다 초회도 내가 최고냐 되어 봤어. 근데 주야 랍중기 또 말렌지 제베나 또 좀어서 간다 지금나서.
진짜야 돼. 진짜야.
북을 따고 있는데.
다. I think they become here now become Buddhist, or Buddhist monks or nuns. Still must be part of the society and part of the productive society. For some work, I think interest for both oneself as well as the society. So this is no problem. Then dress, I think, maybe some problem. So usually it's better not hurriedly take vow. Remain as a normal person and practice Buddha Dharma seriously, and no hurry to take these vows, and especially celibacy, like that. Then gradually, eventually, getting older, then anyway, you have to resign from worldly life. Then perhaps, you see, then become a nun or monk, some clean one, and that's good. Meanwhile, from the young age, study, make sort of sufficient sort of knowledge for practice. I think the other day I mentioned, then when you become, because of the age at the time of retirement, then you have sort of full knowledge. And with that knowledge, then more time, more hours spent on meditation or like that. I think that's more realistic.
Your Holiness, a few days ago, you said that studying Tibetan might not be a good use of one's time. Is it not also true that perhaps studying Tibetan is helpful towards preserving the language and so helping to preserve the Tibetan culture? I have also heard that though there are many good English translations of Tibetan texts, those translated only represent a very small percentage of the Tibetan text still untranslated. Even if one never does translation work, it seems that one's Dharma study might deepen by the study of these texts in Tibetan or in Sanskrit.
If this questioner is a Tibetan, then you must learn Tibetan, naturally. If this questioner is not Tibetan, not mother tongue, then I thought, and meantime, the other day you mentioned, you also having some working job. So then I thought, in that case, the begin study Tibetan, I feel waste of time. But other hand, is someone, of course, as I mentioned earlier, is a Tibetan, then must learn Tibetan, must learn the Tibetan writing. Very, very important. Then, for study the Nalanda tradition thoroughly, a profound way, then Tibetan language is the best language to get the exact, precise meaning of these sort of thoughts, of this teaching. So I think today's world, now 21st century, Sanskrit there, but that more or less language for few scholars. So the only Tibetan, the Chinese also there, I think sufficient sort of vocabulary. In fact, you see, before Tibetan translation start, Chinese translation already started. So much earlier, few centuries earlier. A lot of books there. But I think the precise meaning, according to some Western scholar, Western translator, the Tibetan translation is the best translation. So, like that. So, in case there is possibility to study Tibetan without sort of, because of the much complication, then, yes, start to study Tibetan. But in any case, one Westerner speak Tibetan, the accent, in any case, some different. Always. Yeah.
Do you think there is a direct connection between our thought and the environment?
How so?
Our thought.
Our thought.
And the environment.
Yes, generally yes. And the culture background. But then, one individual, through practice, through learning, develops certain sort of
quality,
certain attitude, and it becomes something profound. Then environment, not much effect.
Environment,
or ecology. I don't know what meaning.
Of course, generally, there is a close connection between human beings and environment is very obvious because we rely entirely on the breathing and then the oxygen comes from the environment.
Oh, what do you mean?
Thought. No, me samtang.
Me samtang. Oh yes, I think a different location, different sort of environment. I think the people in Arab, most of the traditional desert, they have a certain way of sort of thinking. They have a certain way of life. Then those people in Amazon area, very thick forest, and a lot of sort of the rain. So they have their own sort of lifestyle. And Tibetan also, those Tibetan who come from lower land, farming, their lifestyle different than those Tibetan who are in very high altitude, only few yaks. You see, no sort of crops, no farms. No farms. Lifestyle is different. So, environment makes sort of different way of life. Through that way, some way, little different, I think, a mental way of thinking. That's, I think, very little. Very superficial. I don't know.
Your Holiness, if there is a time, if one suffers from depression and is an anti-depression medication, can one meditate with clarity? Now, research on LSD resulted in that 67% of terminally ill people felt no fear of death after their use of this drug. Also, recent research showed participants in a controlled setting felt positive results at least 5 years later. So my question is, can certain drugs help the practice of Bodhisattva?
I don't know, that's up to experts, I don't know. Further research, that's best. I don't know. If I have enough time, then I can join with those researchers for some research.
Your Holiness, thank you for your teaching and presence here. With the opportunity for political change ahead in the United States, please consider asking our new president for our country's help for the reinstatement of a free Tibet and the freedom of all Tibetan lands and people. Many of us many of us want to help and ask our leaders for their help for Tibet. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your concern. And I always feel Tibet issue is moral issue and just issue. And particularly our way of approach, the solution is mutual benefit. Benefit us, benefit peoples of China as a whole. Our approach is one side victory, one side lose. No. Both sides victory. So therefore, those sensible Chinese, many of them supporting our way of approach. So just the issue. And also our issue is very much related with Buddha Dharma. Actually, I think President Wu Jintao sort of the slogan, promotion of harmonious society. The Tibetan Buddhist culture, I think great potential to bring harmonious society. So therefore, you see the Tibetan struggle is something moral issue, like that. And then environment also involved. So all our supporters, I do not consider as a pro-Tibetan, but rather pro-justice. So I appreciate. Then this country, democratic country, every citizen can create some voice, and through your own representatives in the two houses. So you can make some contribution, isn't it? So please take a more active role. Thank you.
This is a personal question. I'm an American who does not have health insurance.
Okay.
Health insurance mesa. Health insurance mess. This means that if anything serious happens to my health, I cannot afford to pay for the treatment. This morning, as I bathed, I found a lump in my breast. Lump, doctor. My husband does not practice or believe in any religion. My mother died of cancer 3 years ago, and his uncle died of cancer last year. Because of this, my husband is going to be very worried and afraid if I tell him about my lump. Should I keep this morning's development a secret to help delay his suffering? Help delay the suffering I will cause when he finds out.
Oh, of course, I very much appreciate and very touched. You see, you ask such questions, but answer also difficult. I think you yourself judge whether you should mention to your husband or not. You have to judge. I don't know. Insurance, you are some NGOs say
maybe you could have access to some non-governmental organization that could help defray the costs.
Or maybe if cost very high, then difficult. But if cost is something manageable, then I will ask Kishila, please, please do something. And also I can make some donation. No? So it is rather sad. It is very sad. Difficult. I think you should think, on this planet, among the 6 billion human beings, many, many people facing this kind of suffering, this kind of problems, and in some cases, I think worst. So remember this, and then you take maximum care yourself, and meantime, take easy way, mentally. Okay. Now, Tatinda. Tala, Najabe, didn't number chapter chatis, Kansani Pumbuta come the easily, Queen of Mimisos. Kansani Pumbulo so Moni Yamain days, Pumbulo Soba Tedani, Medakota to me in Bechida Kansani Tawata, Jibu Imbe, Jibu Imber, Shanda, Takwich Ocean. That's when they are digging. Kansa said the Pumbula, Dane, Judabam, Dane, Yavachita, the Savary. A Pumbuli tension to Yamari. That's the name is done. The Pumbule tension, Tade to Yamava. Diana, Pumbus Semne, down the Kazat said, that's when they are digging. Kazat Takwa Jibu. Right, Pumbu to me, Renshi, Midawa Renshi. 인도산에 풍부스는 자신 말에 스승교라. 다디 시십 사고 강주산에 강사 그 전배 지역하다 강인네야. 전쟁 뭐네 이 주르지. 늘 신절라 덕시 셈네 최저의 뭐 인주지 니고야래. 다디 인도산에 남배슝 정시 여바마 저 나네 다 강사 써야 되기 천시자 인도산에 탈도인데 이기남시간 상당고 세배강 상당고도 와. 다음에 간다 강사 세야디 다 풍물을 떼네 두드베 인도잖아요. 다 뜻이라고 요식 말이에요. 풍물을 된 현배다 이거 말이에요. 다른데 강사를 완전 두베 제 세야디 풍물로 완전 그 조다고 먼저 로르지 풍물로 받대면 되겠지. 로르 셔기야 이 말에 풍물을 떼네 두드베 뭐도 풍물을 떼면이라고 요 말이에요. 뜻이고요.
So we resume our reading from Kamalashila's text. And this is on page 128, where the text reads, Yogis should analyze in the following manner. A person is not observed as separate from the mental and physical aggregates, the elements, and the sense powers, nor is the person of the nature of the aggregates and so forth. And because the aggregates and so forth have the entity of being many and impermanent. So here, Kamalashila is explaining that when we try to observe our sense of selfhood, we often tend to kind of postulate some kind of a self that is unitary, somehow independent of the mind and body complex, and also something that is independent. And that kind of self, as Kamalashila is pointing out, does not exist, because the person, if we examine the nature of the person, one cannot find a person that is independent of the mind-body complex, physical and mental aggregates. And similarly, in our own sense of self, often we have the notion of self being somehow not dependent upon the physical and the mental constituents, but somehow a kind of an owner and a kind of a owner or a master of the physical and the mental elements, and somehow, but not dependent on it, but somehow ruling it from an outside. So again, Kamalashila is pointing out that kind of self or person does not exist. And furthermore, we can kind of extrapolate from this the understanding that if person is findable within the basis upon which the designation, the label is designated, then the person should be, when searched for the identity of the person, it should be findable from amongst the bases, such as the physical and the mental aggregates. Therefore, within the Buddhist tradition, those schools that accept the notion of intrinsic existence on the conventional level would identify, in the final analysis, either the stream of consciousness or some aspect of the consciousness to be the identity, true identity of the person.
Now I want to tell that questioner, the women who have some problem. Here, this time, with me, one Tibetan physician also here. So, I think no harm to see a Tibetan physician. Some cases with Tibetan medicine is helpful. Now in India, also in Europe, and also here also, in some cases, there's some serious illness. They say the Tibetan medicine seems to be working, some cases. And therefore, there's no harm. So if you want to see Tibetan physician, then please contact our center, Deer Park Center.
Deer Park Center.
Within next, till within next few days, our physician available here. So that I want to inform you. That's chöla dame bayan, only. That tinitam, shendu jodum yurume kaza ngobusde da, rangde, nema bebe tebe soro, yanti degi, jodum yurume daasyaji, dame rangse tamachibshe. Yanchi, jodum yurume daasyaji, sunejare. Tadiba, 풍부도 직 다될 수도 아니 풍부 수도 야마와 또 세치면 저들을 다 써야 돼 시야에서 가오래 어디 숨겨야래 다 디슈도 추이다면 걸 숨고도가 다 추이다면 시작이 아니 스다디 최대 강사스 니체 다디 니체야디 이제 녀얼레보다 녀얼레바 니체 너는 롱 접어보다 롱 짜자 니체. 저는 다 롱 접어보 다음에 상식다. 저는 롱 짜자 풍속 취 디디 다음에 상식다니. 지도단에 다연나는 현도시 다신사는 진짜 당소는 시 다도 집어되기 나이 쳐 나이니 나이 믿은 쳐 나이 자오신 도시야 최고. 될 때는 차단 게임도 와. 자, 진짜 이르잖아요. 진짜 차단 게야 될래야 다도 준비 로디 숙충 당투나 대체 별은 안 하도 지다 미 별은 지당으로 샤샤위네 별이 준준한 샤샤네 지 지금 별이 지를 샤샤나 그 시부지 그 왕시부 중에 지디 시다 가서로 자리 주려지 요데도 와 지지메이네 그다 시두로 지게베이네 그 신다스님들이 참고시 되기도 와 상관은 미래 다도 와现在 시부지게 랑시 사부 챙겨도 수시대 고모도 부채 진짜게 겜배 나도 좀 지금 차고도 와 근데 튜브진 땡에 주는 거꾸도 자오셔 그 기부도 와 봐. 쉬게 좀 마십시오. 지단 셔이네. 자, 드리면 이르잖아요. 나도 좀 보세요. 시부지 차오셔인데 그 여러 먹어야지 뒤머리. 자, 다 될래야 다음에 써야 돼. 강사가 다음에 써야 돼. 검체 다 써야 돼. 시부지 가서 올게 진짜 셔서 시부지 다 숙청부터 숙청을 심이나 엔고도 텔레트베 차단을 중도다지 연구야. 다이나야 롱제제 풍속 취어가나 다음에 그 남샤게 매나 풍속 취어디 양고 장점으로 숙심부지 나버디 세대로 그래서 다 다음에 가사가 다음에 타라 롱 제제치디 뒤에 다도 미주직 상무 단위나 다 지나 니자로 롱 접어보도 롱 제제 니가로 야 지 아택 ዝ먹고 숙충도 돼야지 대니는 미베 아택 ዝ먹 숙충도 돼야지 거다 영향시도 가 그래서 리드전에 가사를 주시다면 니여야 돼 내가 전부도 와 다와도确实너도 풍부의 기준이 함쪽에 또 다른 풍부의 기준으로 써 되는 다 대한 담반의 심지 나발 그는 매제신 다와 되게 제가 뒤처럼도 싫어 뒤처럼은 이제 차세지 원이 수도 다른 원인 해봐서도 내가 저로 전 지든 당도자는 이야기도 봐实战에다 당도자는 니야메베 상례 명상부 시도 급도 샤도와 말이 급도 샤모토베 그돌이야 예나 된정원의 영어래 된정원의 영어 당도자는 이거래 치르는 거 당도자는 이규미도가 되는 치르는 거 야 말했어 워낙 근데 수저로 쏘고 도와서는 뒤에 런지 셰베 때문에 박자 세네 나한테 버리지 근데 이들잖아요 숨어든 집은 이부터 아니年龄 셰베 찍래 샤더지年龄 주 셰베 찍래야다 또 박자야 샤더지 자 근데 이들잖아요 그니부터 현실명이 있으네 좀버디야나 그 지야게 나버디 여행에 샤더네 어디 셰야 지났어. 사드리기 전에 믿긴사 그게 가서 그게人生 시바 계시기 유나라.人生 시바 많이 보는다 믿기사다 뒤 배지 매대지. 어떤 내지 다네. 다 가다 치료시도 상월로 난 짐베 땅이 짐베 자수 중에 자지 그래서 짐베 땅이 좋아서 됐습니다. 다들 치료가는 송진이 기동, 송진 자타대로 동, 사도 숨버리. 됐음서부터 다 투명이 버리.
So in the text we read on page 128, Kamalashila says that others have imputed the person as permanent and single. The person as a phenomenon cannot exist except as one or many because there is no other way of existing. Here, Kamalashila is also referring to another possible metaphysical conception of the person as being somehow indeterminate and inexpressible nature. Somehow it's neither one nor separate from the aggregates. It's neither permanent nor impermanent. And believing some kind of inexpressible self, that too is being negated here. And then the text goes on to explain the meaning of the selflessness of phenomena. So we read on page 129, meditation on the selflessness of phenomena should also be done in the following manner. Phenomena, in short, are included under the 5 aggregates, the 12 sources of perception, and 18 elements, and so on. So the significance of explaining selflessness in terms of selflessness of person and the selflessness of phenomena is to really negate grasping at both the agent, the subject of the experience, and also its field of experience, its objects of experience. So, so the more one is able to reduce the intensity of grasping at some kind of notion of an independent self, the greater the impact will be felt that will lessen the intensity of one's affliction, such as attachment and aversion that is rooted in this grasping at self. And this is something that we can even know from our own personal experience, because we know the stronger you're grasping at something, the stronger your attachment for that would be. So for example, because of this, we, on the basis of discriminating between friends and foes, enemies, then on that basis we grasp at these distinction, and then we react to these categories in the manner of strong attachment and clinging, or strong aversion or hostility. So, and this is a very natural part of our responses. For example, Dharmakirti points out in his Pramanavartika exposition of the valid cognition, where he says that so when there is the notion of selfhood, then the notion of other arises, and on the basis of division between self and others, then afflictions such as attachment and aversion arises. So, and we can see this to some extent even in the animals. For example, if you happen to have dogs, you know that those dogs that are very aggressive, that are very clingy, they don't get along with other dogs. Whereas if the dog has a much gentler temperament, kind of easygoing, then we can see that this dog can get along with many other dogs and become friends. The same is true also of human beings. Those human beings who tend to be very self-centered, self-righteous, then it's difficult for these individuals to make easy friends with others, and also these individuals find it very difficult to get along with other fellow human beings. On the other hand, if you have an individual who is much more gentle, settled, and calm, and not too self-centered, then these individuals make easy friends, they can get along with others. So we can see that the stronger one's grasping at a notion of a kind of egoistic self, the greater the tendency to emotionally react whatever happens to that individual. So therefore, by kind of loosening the grip on the notion of self, one is able to at least reduce the kind of intensity of the emotional reactions, whether it takes the form of attachment or aversion. So we can see that how this works. However, if your kind of approach is confined only to dealing with the grasping at self, and you leave the field of experience of that self untouched, then again you can have grasping onto these objects, the fields of experiences. So we tend, for example, to grasp at things as mine and so on. So and therefore, alongside reducing the intensity of grasping at self, one also needs to reduce the intensity of grasping at the objects of that experience of that self. Therefore, the necessity for cultivating the wisdom of selflessness of phenomena. And phenomena here refers to the field of experience of that person. So in other words, this is therefore the significance of explaining the two selflessness, no self of person and no self of phenomena. And then in explaining the no self of phenomena, Kamalashila writes that the physical aspects of the aggregates, sources of perceptions and elements are, in the ultimate sense, nothing other than aspects of the mind. So in this particular sentence, Kamalashila is presenting his kind of more mind-only school leaning perspective, which rejects the reality of the external material world. And since Kamalashila does not uphold the Madhyamaka standpoint that rejects the notion of intrinsic existence even on the conventional level, so when something like external material things cannot be found when critically searched for their essence, then instead of saying that the material phenomena exist only on the nominal level, Kamalashila concludes that the material phenomena does not actually exist. And then the question is, how is it then we can experience different diversity of forms, forms, visible forms and sounds and so on. And here his explanation is that these are aspects of the subjective experience. And this presents the mind-only school's position where the contents of our perceptions, which appear as external objects, they are in the final analysis extensions or of the stream of consciousness itself. And the idea is that the seed on the consciousness, when it manifests in the form of a subject and object duality. But in the final analysis, what we perceive to be external are in fact aspects of the mind. So this is the view that is being presented by Kamalashila here.
대로 소소다는 쉬는 게 뭐니로 소소다고 있는 시 셈지 뭐니로 소소다고 텐데를 줘도 된다면 셈장 담을 메롱데 강게스 준비 뭐니 수로 소배 넘버 진배 심니 수로 소배 넘버 진배 심니 나서지 넘버 나와 대체 됐다마지도 갈란죠 다 되기 다 셈삼바 레 캐시고 또 우모에 다와 수비하래 셈대야 단동 쏘는 거야 지금 나만나 저거 나오지니 아니 시바고에 대바 용신 말에 있으네. 다 노선이 셈대야 단동 소인 말에.
And then we read in page 130 where Kamalashila writes, in the ultimate sense, the mind too cannot be real. How can the mind that apprehends only the false nature of physical form and so forth and appear in the various aspects be real? And just as physical forms and so forth are false, since the mind does not exist separately from physical forms and so forth, which are false, it too is false. So here, Kamalashila is presenting a standpoint that is that transcends the mind-only position, because the mind-only position rejects the reality of the external material world, but takes the world of mental experiences to be substantially real. So Kamalashila is pointing out that mind too, if you apply the critical analysis, the mind too will turn out to be lacking such substantial existence and substantial reality.
다 디샴데 롱마 가셔지 마찬가지. 실제 뭐좀더 대치다 남자 민주배에서 되기. 다나 똑바로 갈란 줄으로서 되기 디지에 고속으로 넣었음게. 다 실제 뭐좀도 다 동반이 있어야 그래. 아니 다른 답을 뭐인지 못 주버래. 생다 숨겨서. 나 düğünü doni damini ene va Gerstein zanen dami shide a doni shide en da ne shi doni ni zhu de doni zhabjia de doni ni shi de song duo dinan da dongban da ga qishi de chen ni qishi de chen ni dongban de doni shi doni qishi de chen ni di ding ge dami song xiu mo ji ha de wa da di na ga chi bu sha.
So then
so we
read in stanza, on page 133, Kamalashila writes in the first paragraph, when the object does not exist, its characteristics cannot exist. So how can they be examined? So he's here pointing out that since the objects, both the person and the phenomena turn out to be devoid of real existence, substantially real existence, then the emptiness, which is a characteristic of these phenomena, too will found out to be lacking in substantial existence. So here, Kamalashila is pointing towards the need to understand the emptiness of emptiness. So, for example, in the sutras, the scriptures, when emptiness is presented in the briefest form, it is presented in terms of the two selflessnesses, the selflessness of person and that of phenomena. But then you have many different elaborations on this, enumerations. You have fourfold division of emptiness. You have 16-fold division of emptiness. You have 20-fold divisions of emptiness, and so on. So in many of these more extensive divisions of emptiness, there are specific examples where emptiness itself is taken as the subject and then critically analyzed and demonstrated to be devoid of, and demonstrated to be empty. So therefore, emptiness of emptiness is presented. And this is an important point because in the sutras, scriptures, and also in the commentarial text, it is emphasized that one must not grasp at emptiness to be absolute, emptiness to be substantially real.
디슈데 디슈데 대체서 실효진 나버져야 관계선 내저be 뭐고 관계 원이 전담을 내버리면서 대체 나버리면서 그 띵인증은 주고 최선적인 원이 매번이죠. 또서 세트기 와다 지금 도된주 중나로라 미도바 송대하게 나 미도바로 직먹고 사요. 여체 미도바 삼로 직먹고 사요체 다 아다 배운 앞주 처분 나서 미도바 쓰다지 드니질 고꾸래 스페 그래서 미베베 잡아사다 식네 아니 대코나니 다 통일주산에 다 대코나니도 쓰지도 미베다 로데니 미도바 쓰야다 들으셨어 그래서
Then we read in page 133, he writes, in this way, when the person does not firmly apprehend the entity of a thing as ultimately existing, having investigated it with wisdom, the practitioner engages in non-conceptual, single-pointed concentration, and thus the identitylessness of all phenomena is realized. So there is a reference to a state of non-conceptuality. And generally, there are many different types of non-conceptual states, and Kamalashila is pointing out here the highest form of, or the most excellent form of a non-conceptual state is a state of mind where the individual has directly realized emptiness in a non-conceptual state of mind. So we'll now read from Shantideva's text.
We
already read some stanzas from the beginning earlier. So we move to stanza 13 of the text.
근데 니가로 러신 용수 양한테 봐봤어. 나 들려래. 경유들은 말이지. 러신 용수 양한테 봐서야 디 러신 남다도 셔되기요래. 양대서야 디 러신 남다 여버지고 그저 말이 시저 러신 남다 디 아니 루브르 외견디디 가서 그게 세롱리 봉롱리 다 러신이 남다고 디가는 견디디 아니 녀부께베 또지 좀네 딘데기 다 루브르 남다 연도 된댕에 다 딘데디니 냥됐어요. 그래서
So we read in stanza 13 where Shantideva entertains a question which reads, if one could be ultimately emancipated and yet transmigrate conventionally, then even the Buddhas would transmigrate. So what would be the point of the Bodhisattva's way of life? So the point being made here is that an opponent raises a critical point about the usage of the expression natural nirvana. So in the text, for example, the ultimate nature of things is characterized as natural nirvana. This refers to the emptiness. So, and if there is such a thing as a natural nirvana, then what would be the need for such bodhisattva's way of life? Because there wouldn't be any basis to differentiate between unenlightened existence and enlightened existence. So here, to this, Shantideva is responding that this natural nirvana does not indicate that we are already enlightened, but it points to the natural purity of phenomena insofar as their ultimate nature is concerned. However, it is on the basis of eliminating the pollutants which are adventitious, one will then be able to actualize nirvana on the basis of this natural nirvana, which is emptiness. So, so this is how Shantideva responds to this question.
다 되네. 정합하지. 강수 추비 예면은 선도마다 samsara. 우모베 시바된 주 야마레 순전에 인삼사베다 수조바들이 말해. 다 이리 바꿔야 돼.
So from stanza 15, where we read, when even a mistaken cognition does not exist, by what is an illusion ascertained? So from here, because the middle way thinkers, the Madhyamakas, reject any substantial reality to any phenomena, including the mind. So the mind-only school's standpoint has been critiqued, and therefore from this point onwards, mind-only school, the Yogacharan, are raising various objections, and each of these objections are being addressed in the text by Shantideva.
난데 이 슬로건이 써주고지.
So then we move to stanza 26.
지도 통도 시바다 딘니 가버 잠인데 딘니 동에 교교가 담버도 도시 있어요. 전에다 안다 베네시르니 분할이야. 숨이 담이 치면서 된데도 봐. 미소 오무즈메 소소 기지즈메 신의 송샤디 아니 디메신다고 말해스. 디르 거기요 말해스. 가르거고 슬바이나 대다 담버 주버도 거기요 말해스. 가르슬나 담버 주버 셴베 짐버티 아니 차단기하기 풍용이요. 근데 이거 이르잖아요. 지도 통도 시바다 딘니 가고 참민데
So this is actually, the English translation is in stanza 25, where we read, the manner in which something is seen, heard, or recognized is not what is being refuted here, but the conceptualization of its true existence, which is the cause of suffering, is being rejected here. So, and this, for example, we find statements in the Heart Sutra where it says, you know, there is no form, there is no feeling, there are no mental formations and consciousness and so on. So, so when we read these statements of negation, we should not understand it to negate the very existence of these phenomena. So here, this is what Shantideva is pointing out, that what is seen, what is experienced, and what is felt, and these immediate contents of their consciousness, these facts, are not being negated. What is being negated is the substantial existence of these things, because it is the grasping at a substantial existence which is the cause of suffering. And that grasping is being negated here. So that's what Shantideva is pointing out. Then the question is, how do we then, how does this conceptualization of true existence, substantial existence, come to cease? How does it get undone? Then this is presented in stanza 32. Yeah, stanza 32.
독립하자 권변이 뭐부 파자 봉주시스 뭐부 덴지 파자 봉주시스 제야메주 권변이 태양 친에 봉원죠 강습강시 매도시 따정거 보면 대승금에 된로 로이는 지단네스 강습거도 거면도 로이는 지단바 샤메베 미범에 봐도 시지 단 믹제 타다 식제 연도인이 덴진 그 잡아 주세 시골나 차는 거였어.
So we read in stanza 32 where Shantideva says that, which explains how this conceptualization of true existence comes to be dismantled. It says that by building up the imprints of emptiness, the imprint of existence will be diminished. And after accustoming oneself to the fact that nothing truly exists, even that will come to diminish. And then he writes, if it is conceived that a phenomena that does not really exist cannot be perceived, then how can a non-entity which is without basis stand before the mind? And then he writes, when neither an entity nor a non-entity remains before the mind, then, since there is no other possibility, having no object, it becomes calm. So what Shantideva was explaining here is that through this process of negation, when one has succeeded in dismantling any objectifiable basis, any ground that one can objectify, then one will kind of become calm, because there will be no grasping. There is no basis for grasping.
고물루루기 자시를 완다 랍지 그렇고 랍지 뜻이지 이보다 라던 요모 사베 탈 라던 요모 남도래 더다들 저번에 동반이 긴가 보니 손에 집으시다.
So this is very similar to a stanza in Nagarjuna's Fundamental Wisdom of the Middle Way, Mula Madhyamaka Karika, where he says that it is through the cessation of karma and afflictions one gains freedom, and karma and afflictions arises from conceptualization, and conceptualization arises from elaborations, and the elaboration are calmed or pacified by means of emptiness.
다양 낭배 그래서 좀 더 나리야 아니 뉴모 본을 가사가 담에서 가사가 담에 락바트 동에 또배 드겨래스 아니 시드 본을 주의 담에 공부를 해 진짜 숨게 그래 다 되려야 고물루루기 아니 좀 전에 공부배 심시 때 비슷하네 가다이니 가사주고 최이던 저 가사가 저 시체인 거 알았어. 근데 이 메이드잖아요. 시시 풍부지 뭐 디지털은 지. 뭔지는 양래来来讲的教育现在日常上送不的。근데 이 메이드잖아요. 최이다면 도고 그래서 유모 본은 최이다면 도고 그래.现在다 저버디 솔로가 10주마지. 솔로가 10주네.
So
대부통에 전유기 동유통에 지시차 선다 되는마 아니 저기다면 유무보안에 주의하면 또 그렇게 숨었다.
So from stanza 40 on, Shantideva is responding to a particular line of thinking within the Buddhist school that uphold and in fact the middle way school that uphold the view that in order to gain liberation from cyclic existence, one needs to gain realization of no self of person, and in order to eliminate the subtle obscurations to knowledge, one needs to gain realization of the no self of phenomena. And so here Shantideva is critiquing this position and arguing that even in order to attain liberation from cyclic existence, the realization of emptiness, realization of no self of phenomena is indispensable. And here he's articulating representing Nagarjuna's own view, when Nagarjuna writes in Precious Garland, where he says that so long as there is a grasping at one's aggregates, and there will be the potential for the arising of grasping at I and mine, and from this grasping at I and mine, and then there is the potential for creating new karma, and from karma will arise rebirth. So Shantideva is pointing out here that even in order to attain a liberation from cyclic existence, samsara, the realization of no selflessness of phenomena is indispensable. So we read from stanza 40 when he says, liberation comes from understanding the truths. So what is the point of perceiving emptiness? So from this point on, Shantideva is responding to that question. Then we move on to stanza 52.
몽보 덴징기 왕기 동네 심쟁기 전도 가서 다 돌아 찾고 근처에 소원의 신기 돌아 찾고 관에 상신도 씹어송야 대단하야 변동치는 씹을민 소원의 신기 씹에 굉장히 막아 진짜 중요한 게 돈이도 저거래 다 돈이다 다 레샤 돈이도 저거래 가르쳤나 돈이도 관계 제주 선전나 소원의 돈이도 아니 돈에 타전이 그 소원이 되잖아요 닝지 셔부셔부지 해지 닝지 셔부셔부지 깨야게 깨 셔부셔부지도 와 따고 깨신 상부 있나 자 돈이 무슨 돈 닝지 셔부지 쳐도 야 말게 간다 돈이 돈에 깨기 아니 좀 세우는 거 지금 뭐셔 되게 뭐셔가 게 돈에 세우는 것이 돈에 세우는 인기라 돈에라 아니 가서 대화는 지니다 돈이 어디에라就是你是家就军事修吧，但是你就是在提你是家的朝鲜，你是的上线都西不松呀些，西不松那样西北更加马过去钱啊，但第一他们都你到垃圾的。
So in stanza 52 we read, remaining in the cycle of existence for the sake of those suffering due to delusion is achieved through freedom from attachment and fear. That is the fruit of emptiness. So what what Shantideva is explaining here is that for those Bodhisattvas who are able to remain in samsaric existence out of their compassionate concern for other sentient beings, that courage and then that ability too is a result and fruit of realization of emptiness. And this echoes a line that is found in Nagarjuna's commentary on the awakening mind, Bodhicitta Vivarana, where Nagarjuna says that when the practitioner gains a deep understanding of emptiness, then truly kind of a spontaneous compassion will arise for the other sentient beings, in the form of almost like attachment. So of course, Nagarjuna is not saying that just because one realizes emptiness, compassion will automatically arise, but rather when the conditions are there, then one's realization of emptiness can act as a powerful impetus for giving rise to compassion, because the realization of emptiness will bring about understanding in the person that suffering, and there is a possibility of an end to suffering. So when you recognize the possibility of a cessation of suffering, then your sense of compassion for the beings who continue to, be caught up in a cycle of suffering and grasping at suffering to be a form of happiness, then your compassion for these beings, when you recognize that there is a possibility of end to that suffering, compassion is going to be much stronger. So this is what Shantideva is pointing out here.
This one. That is what the Tenduni Devin, Mutun, the Shologa Yusuntiki, that Tuni Toga Kovachuntua. That's not Tommy should see when the time. Tender Chasm is out, Tommy in the commission. No more shit, Mimium Tommy. New subject to be Tedish on Mijis. That they should the Nojubuti. Cat Tanga Yona, general, Jiguna, turning Gaya, Jibu, Sushi, that Yamaris, that Yona, Niku, that Niku, that turned up a Yona, that turned up only Yona, you didn't Jubu, you didn't Jubiana, Sana Niku, that's us. So the Tassi Damai, Daniel, Chamai, that's just on them, that Dr. Zani.
So in these subsequent two more stanzas, three more stanzas, Shantideva explains in a sense the benefits and fruits of gaining realization of emptiness. And then stanza 56 onwards, then Shantideva presents a series of contemplation on the analysis on searching for the essence of self. And the point being made here is that if self exists in the manner in which we perceive it to exist, possessing intrinsic existence, inherent existence, then when we search for it within the constituents of our body and mind, it should be findable. But how, so Shantideva is saying now look for it. So he writes, if there was something called I, fear would come from anywhere. If there is no I, whose fear will there be? Teeth, hair, nails are not I, nor am I bone, blood, mucus, and so on. So here he's presenting exactly the same line of analysis that Nagarjuna presents in his Precious Garland when he talks about the person is neither the earth element, the water element, fire element, and so on. So this presents the establishment of the selflessness of person. So from stanza 59 onwards, specific views of the classical non-Buddhist positions on self are being negated, refuted.
디두 제법보다 디두 영어보 아니 이거 말봐 스산에 데 말했어 우마베 다메 세안디 아니 다 원이지 못 주고 쓰게 다 원이지 못 주고 써야 좀세 쏘데 다 다음에 줘야 좀세 쏘디 오불로 주기 댄신 잡아 중앙가 되는 동반이도 셴 송어를 마도 쟤는 많이 버디 동반이를 숨겨야 말해 댄신 잡아 중앙 강인 버디 셴라 라레베 셴라 뜨버리 셴라 땀버리 그래서 dinday 인도산에 셴라 뜨버다 마드버니 버디 겨하래 겨하는 망가래 풍수가 야마래 야나 뜨는 두주리 야나 마드버 두주리 뜨는 두버지 라트에 인도산에 마드베 모니지 두바 코랑 뭐네 떠바면 두드버지 다 내버지 다 쳐줘 자 떠버 좀제도 쳐디 마드베 정신 차와시 두인도산에 그 떠버 정신이 뭐지 샤용도 두초는 샤용도 dinday 인도산에 다디 강사 원이 주고 야마를 쓰고 말도 강사 매발을 쓰고 말이지 텔레스로 풍속을 쉬어야 돼 원이 주고 야마를 쓰고 말도 매발을 쓰고 말이지 that's so important.
So in stanza 70 onwards, Shantideva is actually clarifying what is being negated in the context of no self, presentation of no self, and he is explaining that in the course of presenting the understanding of no self, it is not person, the reality of the person that is being negated, but it is the substantial reality of person that is being negated. It is the independent existence of person that is being negated. So the question is raised here, without the self, the relationship between an action and its result is not possible. For if the agent of an action has perished, who will have the result? So these questions are raised, and so Shantideva is explaining that it is not that the person itself is being negated, rejected. It is the inherent existence of the person that is being rejected. So here, so the meaning of emptiness is really, as explained before, emptiness. The meaning of emptiness is that. The meaning of emptiness of a person is the emptiness, absence of the independent existence of the person. So, as explained by Nagarjuna in his Fundamental Wisdom of the Middle Way, where he says that that which is dependently originated, that I describe to be empty, and this too is dependently designated, and this is the true middle way. So there, the meaning of emptiness has been explained in terms of dependent origination. So therefore, when Nagarjuna presents emptiness, he is not talking about mere unfindability of things when you search for them. Therefore, in fact, the emptiness is presented on the basis of things and events as being dependently originated. And because all phenomena are dependently originated, and they are devoid of a nature that makes them independent, because dependent and independent are mutually exclusive, and there is no third possibility. They are directly contrary to each other, and there is no third possibility. And since phenomena are dependent, that precludes them from being independent, and so this absence of independence of phenomena is their ultimate nature. So it is in this way that dependent nature of phenomena is used as a rationale or the premise for establishing the emptiness of independent existence. And then we will read stanza similarly.
타녀도 여봐도 몽배 샤바다 말이지 얘네 몽고 머리배 내댕에게 타녀배 쉐병을 항상 다 드리지를 알았어.
So similarly, another question is raised on in stanza 75, when the text reads, "If no sentient beings exists, for whom is there compassion?" And then the response Shantideva gives is that for one who is imagined through delusion, which is accepted for the sake of the task. So although Shantideva was not suggesting here that the existence of sentient beings is a mere illusion, but rather Shantideva was explaining that the existence of sentient beings is posited on the conventional level of reality, which is perceptible to sentient beings whose mind is deluded by ignorance.
두주경안에 추이담이다는 보고 하래. 다 안덕급대 추이담이다는 보여야 돼. 류 전반이샤, 소화 전반이샤, 셈 전반이샤, 추 전반이샤. 시부디 다 전반이샤 시디 랑된 상담이 니주루야 돼. 현대의 상담이 니주루야 돼. 다전에 전반이샤 시 땡기 추니 상담이잖아요. 추이담이다는 보여야 디랑도 돼.
So then from stanza 78 onwards of the English translation, the presentation of the selflessness of phenomena is explained. And here, so, and this is presented within the framework of meditation on the four foundations of mindfulness. Generally speaking, the four foundations of mindfulness, when it is applied with respect to one's own personal experience of suffering, then the practices of the four foundations of mindfulness lead to the realization of true renunciation. And when you apply the meditation to other sentient beings, then it leads to the arising of compassion. But here, the four foundations of mindfulness framework is used to meditate upon the emptiness of all phenomena.
단전에마 샴데 자도 좀이 뒤 나디 리시지든 무슨지 그는 좀 통하지 그래서 그 교류적으로 도시생활 된지기 규민을 경험 거 봐야 자도 추수집든
자도 추수집든 자도 주면 투 Jada jume tuim.
그래.
Kazu jada.
도다들은 리신 직된 무슨 게 균은 소지 통이 빼면 동부 소인이 규예에 개발이지.
Less. So this is on page, stanza 116 of the English text, which reads, people observe every cause through direct perception, since the components of a lotus, such as the stalk and so forth, are produced by a variety of causes. So this is presenting the diamond slivers argument, reasoning.
내가 지금도 돼. 균은 지금 무슨 게 균은 통인세. 빼면 동부 소예니 규예에 개발이지. 내가 시험도 하는데. 규의 관계 제시는 나기 규의 니레소스. 네, 지실 규의 제게는 나기 규의 투 니레 신. 뜻이. 디샴데 당내디 자도 조심지. 안다 원주로 두임부터 가니 디수고데 런루기 셰바셰자 레게당 토미디도 레레 대외 것이 개보면 사지 상다도 디티다 도와
So here this is
나도 디친 거다 지금 가서게 좋아 지금 매달 주시도 소고 지금 세미 펜부도 돼 당연히 생각하는 샘된 게 변는 류기 차로도 되지 뭔지 코르코레 나기 뒤 니레소야 뒤도는 조금 해라스 딱 소화디도 좋아 소화디도 샤윤도 디난데 토미 디도 레레 디야시사 something like that.
So here this is making an important point in the text here. We read in stanza 116 when Shantideva writes, people observe everyday cause through direct perception, since the components of a lotus, such as the stalk and so forth, are produced by a variety of causes. And then a question is raised, what makes the variety of causes? And then the response is given, a preceding variety of causes. And then another question is raised, how can a cause give an effect? And then the response is, because of the power of preceding causes. So in this stanza, so, we can see here that Shantideva is presenting a causal process which is natural, which is kind of almost in the manner of evolution. And then, so later in stanza 122, then Shantideva writes, happiness and suffering are the results of action. Say then, what did he create? If the cause has no beginning, how can its effect have a beginning? So here, I personally feel that Shantideva is making a distinction between two levels of causation. One is the mere natural process of causation. So as we discussed yesterday, so with respect to the flower, there may be a level of causal processes which has nothing to do with karma. And then in stanza 122, he brings in the concept of causation with respect to experience of happiness and suffering. So when a sentient being's experience of happiness and suffering comes into the picture, then the karmic processes comes into the picture.
다디 수제 다디와 양 무지고 더 가야지 마치 되는 참아도 세명 남샤들이 마샤 또 남시 다 샤야 오늘 그시 관계 녀와 통도 다디디 땡땡땡지 수가 더 유상지 뭐지 다디는 뭐 여러 교발을 셔서기 유미긴 곡된지 수 예시 여러 개면데 메시 매번 개와 민신 동의도 주면 없어야 지 디만 짜이 뭐다
And then we read from the point where Shantideva is presenting analysis of the phenomena from the point of view of its effect. which is and presenting the same argument that Nagarjuna presents in the 70 stanzas.
유시 요바 게임인데 메시는 봐 경민스 유미경고 주울드는 유미경고
슐가 나와요.
뭐 요바 주발로 교육과 지시 왠지 전에 맨날 교육과 지시 저자다 교육정 뭐뭐 매번 교르미 사디 던지기 던지 숨을 쉬우대
알라데르샤
이모서
데루데도 야다십십데
줄로데 시땡기 되데
뭐미와
되다 줄로데
다르바
숨쉬니도 랑되다 왜 됐어 좀비 줄로데 땡기 이제 어디
So it's from 145, where we read, for something that already exists, what need is there for a cause? And if something does not exist, what is the need for a cause? So this is presenting another line of reasoning which approaches the phenomena from the point of view of its effect. And this is the same line of argument found in the same line of reasoning found in the 70 stanzas of Nagarjuna.
단전에 tamashinghe 응게 내금을 따라시 디제 자도 쏘고 롬밀럼 때부터 남부전 쉬신다 스타디 데미 주사리 수수데 디수데 롬밀럼 때부터 남부전 쉬신다 양에도 남한테 봐 뒤쪽에 켜버면 이스
So then it's in stanza 150 where Shantideva writes, states of existence are like dreams. Upon analysis, they are similar to plantain trees. In reality, there is no difference between those who have attained nirvana and those who have not. So this is presenting the understanding of the inseparability or indistinguishability between samsara and nirvana. So from stanza 151 onwards, Shantideva explains that once you have meditated upon emptiness, then a perspective upon phenomena in the manner of illusion-like character arises. Therefore, in your mind, the kind of strong grasping towards things which previously ordinary people tend to have will not arise in us. So we'll read then the final stanza of this chapter, which reads, when shall I respectfully teach emptiness and the accumulation of merit in terms of conventional truth and without reification to those whose views are reified? So with that, the ninth chapter, the reading of the ninth chapter is complete.
Yeah. That is what they do to Walu. So, Walu, Chisinanga never done draw Chisin. This is done in that unit. Draw to me, sell show. Draw to me, can't you? Take talent, mean you change your simple guess what you draw, tell us, show.
So, towards the end of the 10th chapter, the chapter on dedication, we read, this is on page 144, we read the very important stanza. This is stanza 55, where we read, for as long as space endures, and for as long as the world lasts, may I live dispelling the miseries of the world. And whatever suffering there is for the world, may it all ripen upon me. May the world find happiness through all the virtues of the Bodhisattvas. May the teaching that is the sole medicine for the suffering of the world and the source of all prosperity and joy remain for a long time, accompanied by riches and honor. I bow to Manju Ghosha, through whose grace my mind turns to virtue. I salute my spiritual friend, through whose kindness it becomes stronger. So we now return to Kamalashila's text.
다 되기 간다. 제대로 강사도 출로 다음에 답이 나도는 로정문다. 다 나도는 로시. 비치. 다 대대로 동번이 있다는 펀네. 아니 미국 동번이 있지. 방에 되겠지. 유리선에 다 되게 가는 거 팬이 줘야지. 다 도시니 아니 가서 그게 째더기 장배 루시장에 다 대화해야지. 이니 연두산에 에노 돈이를 미고 지도도 방도 루시들이 말에. 다 지단도 해서 방도에 누구면도 신내도 되는 수도도 싫어 잡아셔야 뒤견에 대도 대화해야지. 방도에 방도게. 난 되네 방도가 미고 딱 지도를 미쳐. 에니 돈이 뭐야 되래. 또 세윤도 다 당연 퇴진 시사잖아. 전주서도 쌤 좀만 뭐 깨니 연배 그돌라 다 랑규라 퇴진 처럼 사디 깨버려. 다대 5분 넘어이나 대권의 돈이 있다. 검세. 돈이 있다. 내가 배니 되지 저기야. 다 되면아야 아니 장주 쌤 깨살에 제일 친구 접어를 넣어야 돼. 이 3대인데 싫어를 넣어 뒤들 넣어야 제인이잖아. 다 돈이라 아니 가서 우리 그게 돈이 또 되네 돈이는 군주토비는잖아요. 잘람사차. 다 되네 이제 림베게 다동 돈이를 쌓나 장네. 돈이를 다 돈이를 공부되니 돈이를 쌓나 토이는잖아요. 아니 돈이 무슨 돈이는잖아요. 통람사를 깨버려. 사탕의 시기를 깨버려. 통방 다 방사 가야로 오지 방병 고된 뭐마다 뒤도 타왔다. 다 되네 무튼이 아니 사고 림지 받드네 아니 다 사든베 주스는 되게 사게베 고드스는 되게 이니 윤주방이야래 근데 다섯순 내거리야 다섯순 내거리야 시디냐 못돼 다 놓으세니 아니 사주 드네 남기 타야 다 대강이야 이니 안내 배경니 다 셈타 체니 참유셈디 모두 줘야 답시 다시 들어오는 그냥 내리 난 믿고 있다는 내리 다 왔대 되게 타네 검님만 남기스 기도는 사실 저 정도가 검님만 남기 지도 거기 자진다 저진도 순거래 검님만 남기 믿고 뭐 쫑어 코네 땡네 뉴메베서 쳐도 제거레스 배선도 백감네 아니 룽근난저로 때네 아니 왜서 쳐도 남기야래 콜로도 아마다 지 가서 주고디 가다 대저다 아니 개발도 하셔서 뭐 지도 그도네 아니 정론 technically 냠는 게 다시 정론 서래 나 가다 아니 대화치모 동 대진 다 대진 그것이 냠는 또 전에 뒤되네 그래서 치기 하네 사들 좀 그래 나 되게 말라미가 단도단데 다 뒤는 배겨 동시에 아니 시도 차시 차요 뭐지니 못되니 아니 뭐 맞아 상년에 가져야 내일 거만 사대 아니 구시등이 아니 나는 심기반 현진실 양다조의 전좀 더 사대 다 뒤뒤다 그거 용수 줘 사대 그거 용주 쓰셔야 돼.
So, as explained before, once you have cultivated a deeper understanding of emptiness, and then you choose that as the object of your meditation, and so when you are able to, because of your tranquil abiding, quality of tranquil abiding, when you are able to, focus your mind in a settled manner on that object, which is emptiness that you have established, then as a result of this, one will be able to engender within oneself a physical and mental pliancy, which then give rise to a kind of a permeating feeling, a sense of bliss. And at that point, one has attained special insight or insight focused on emptiness. And so the mode of procedure is the following. First, the practitioner need to cultivate the quality of tranquil abiding as the basis of the stability of the mind, and then of course, since we are talking about a Mahayana practitioner, it is important to cultivate the awakening mind, generate awakening mind. And the instance the person has generated a spontaneous awakening mind, totally non-simulated, naturally arising awakening mind, at that point, the person has entered the first path, the path of accumulation. And if the practitioner is someone with a superior faculty, such a practitioner would already have established the understanding of emptiness prior to gaining realization of bodhicitta. But even one hasn't gone through this, once you have attained bodhicitta and entered the first path of accumulation, then the Bodhisattva must implement the Bodhisattva practices which involve engaging in the practice of the 6 perfections, which would involve a cultivation of concentration and wisdom of emptiness. So in this way, one will be able to then utilize the mental stability attained through tranquil abiding, and on that basis apply the analysis on understanding emptiness. And when you, at that point, gain a meditatively derived realization of emptiness, at that point one has reached the second path, which is the path of preparation. And still on the basis of continued meditation on emptiness and deepening of the familiarity, when the individual practitioner arrives at a point where the realization of emptiness moves on to a state of total direct experience, non-conceptual, at that point the person has reached the third path, which is the path of seeing, and at that point one also attains the true cessation, nirodha, true cessation, and so then, and also at that point one has attained the first level of Bodhisattva, the Bodhisattva bhumi, and then one progressively moves through the other levels of the Bodhisattva, the second, third, and so forth. And when you reach the 8th level of Bodhisattva bhumi, then at that point one will also be able to eliminate from its root all the afflictions, from their root all the afflictions, and then from the 8th level onwards, which are referred to as the perfected levels of the Bodhisattva, one will then be able to directly apply antidote against the subtle obscurations to knowledge, and in this way progressively move on to the remaining levels of the 10 Bodhisattva bhumis. And then this path, at that point one needs to also complement one's practice with practices from the Vajrayana teachings, which would involve utilization of the subtlemost level of mind, the innate mind of clear light. And and in order to induce this state of innate mind of clear light, there are many different approaches. For example, the Gelug master, Kirup Nosang Gyaltso, explains that, he says that those representing the earlier Tibetan lineages, in which here he is talking particularly about Nyingmapa's and Kagyupa approach of Nyingmapa approach of Dzogchen and Kagyupa approach of Mahamudra. Nosang Gyaltso says that those who are from those approaches that represents the earlier lineages employ the method of non-conceptual meditation alone to induce the subtle mind of clear light. And then he says that, however, the method from the Guhyasamaja Tantra involve the utilization of the prana, the vayu within the channel, the energy channels, And the mother tantras such as Chakrasamvara Tantra, Hiruka or Chakrasamvara Tantra, or Hivajra Tantra, these practices, these methods involve primarily inducing states of great bliss, and in this way, the subtle mind of clear light is made awake, kind of manifest within the practitioner. So, so using whatever of the methods that one may, one then makes the subtle mind of clear light manifest, and on that level applies antidotes against the subtlemost aspects of the obscuration to knowledge, and finally culminate in the attainment of Buddhahood that we spoke about earlier as being the embodiment of the 3 or 4 Buddhakayas, and then attain full awakening. And that's also the point when our ultimate aspiration, which we cultivated at the very beginning when we generated the awakening mind, because the awakening mind has been defined as characterized by 2 aspirations: aspiration for bringing about others' welfare and aspiration to attain Buddhahood for that sake. So at that point, then our aspiration that we had made has finally come to total fruition. So in the scriptures, sutras, the arahats are sometimes referred to as those who have accomplished their task. So here too, from the Mahayana practitioner's point of view, the fully enlightened ones are someone who have done their tasks. So the ultimate purpose of the composition of both Kamalashila's text and Shantideva's text is the attainment of that state.
Oh yeah.
So at that point, then the true meaning of the mantra in the Heart Sutra, Tatyatha, Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate, Bodhe Swa, would have finally become real.
Now, as a tradition, I read Shantideva's, the beginning few words from the Shantideva's book. Bodhisattva aya Charya Avadara, Bhagavad Gita, Shabana Sandesh, Chazalo, Dishi Chayugonga, Saja, Chayogono, Kubi Chaseti, Dishi Sajitona Jugon, Lungshin Dudin, and Jabracha. So now completed, now last, I think 2 weeks in the United States. Now 2 major lecture on Buddhism. So I'm very happy. So I want to thank the audience here and also the Lehigh University.
Lehigh, at Lehigh in Pennsylvania.
So in both cases, you see, the audience are really very, very attentively, you see, listen. Maybe in some remote area, maybe some sleeping, maybe. Otherwise, you see here, no one. So I very much appreciate. Thank you. So this is Firstly, I consider a little contribution for deeper understanding about Buddha Dharma. And then, through that way, contribution for promotion of religious harmony. And then also, through that way, promotion of human value. So, thank you very much. And then all those concerned organizers, including many volunteers, work very hard. So I very much appreciate all our work for And actually all our work for, directly or indirectly, for promotion of human happiness. So, all people, or concerned people, now really accumulated, make some accumulation. So now important is dedicate. That's all. So, okay. Again, see you next time. So till then, I myself also every day trying to practice these things as much as I can. So I will continue. And those people who actually is genuine sort of interest, and please practice. That's important. Just mere knowledge will not much help. Practice, implement, transformation here or here. Then you really get actual practical benefit. Thank you. Goodbye. Good?
Samjung